You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
Good morning, it's Allan Aguirre. It's the Chameleon Church Show. It is Tuesday, January 21st. We're more than halfway through January already. Time keeps on slipping. Yeah, and I've mentioned this before. It's like touring. We would leave March or April on tour, come back in November, and the whole year was gone. What had happened? This is what this show does to my life. My whole life is just... Every time I turn around, it's the end of the month, and we're here again. But Allan Aguirre, Chameleon Church Show, Tuesday morning. Thank you for joining us in the future, because you're probably not here right now. And what else is going on? I turned 40 years old in Jesus this week. That's right, 40 years. 40 years ago this week, I was in Guatemala, freaked out of my mind. Unsaved. Yeah, family had just totally, completely, they literally got rid of me. One-way ticket to a third world country, to a country where I didn't even know the language. Yeah, to live with a missionary uncle. So that was a bad week, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, obviously. Otherwise, I don't think I wouldn't be here right now. I would have jetted a long time ago. What else is going on this week? Internet connection. Yeah, so they've assured me twice that my internet connection is fixed. It's not true. I tried doing a Facebook Live over the weekend, and it lasted less than 5 minutes, and I lost all connectivity. I'm like a few feet away from my router, too. So it's not fixed. I'm having a hard time just doing the most basic of internet type of things, let alone live streaming. So our local neighborhood Walmart didn't even have a Cat 5 cable. So I knew I had some from, decades ago. It's 1999, kids, because I found an old Cat 5 cable and connected it, and we're working. No, that's not acceptable. So I'll be battling with them again. I left some messages already, and I'll be battling with them. What else? Yeah, that internet stuff really bothers me. Yeah. So, hey, let's get the other guys on. Maybe they have something more exciting to say than I do.
Morning.
Morning.
What's so good about it?
We're here. Darryl. Darryl, you could do the show by yourself. So
No, I couldn't. What would I do? What would I talk about? Who would I talk to about it?
Well, the one person that's on. Well, the future people.
Yeah.
We should refer to them as the future people now.
The audience we'll have in the future, later on tomorrow. Yeah. So I think our content it's got to be our content. It's got to be what's going on. We have one visible viewer, no content. Dude. This show is going downhill, bro.
Hey, you want to move to prime time?
Prime time. What time is prime time?
Oh, so you don't watch TV or anything?
No, I haven't watched TV in a long time.
TV considers the evening shows between 7 and 10.
Right. No, yes, I know that. No, I don't. No, I don't want to do that. The last thing I want to do is stop and interrupt my world and my life to do something like this.
Well, actually, according to what you said earlier, is this show is actually eating up the time of your life. So the whole hour and 15 minutes that you do on a Tuesday morning, it's just your life is just spinning out of control.
I'd rather wake up early and do this and then go on with my day than stop my life, my day, and go, oh no, I've got to go do a show, because I don't know where I can't guarantee where I will be. I don't know where I would be at. It's not like I have this routine where it's like, oh, I have these blocks of time where this is going to happen, and I can then schedule it. Anything could happen.
And then there was Darryl.
And anything does happen. And then there was Darryl. Good morning, Darryl. How you doing over there, bro?
I'm good. Thanks.
What's going on? How's your week?
Week is good. Was back doing renovations yesterday. Cutting drywall, laying down subfloor. It's all good. I don't know if my knees would agree with me, but...
Are you wearing knee pads?
There's a piece of foamy thing that I lean on. But no, I don't actually have knee pads.
You should go to a surplus store and you get some knee pads for like $15, $20.
Mm-hmm.
They're like for military, so they're padded. And I personally like the flat dark earth. Speaking of flat dark earth, did you see Richmond yesterday?
Oh boy.
Dang.
Antifa nowhere to be found.
Well, I wouldn't show up. I were them and get my head caved in. Those guys are, oh my gosh.
Well, what does that show you? It's if we can push back the bad guys if enough rally around.
Good guy with a gun, no bad guys. Yeah, funny how that works.
Well, don't they know it? That's why they want to take away the guns.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Now, if Christians were to actually get together and start praying together and praying the Father's will, imagine what we could do.
Imagine.
But it's not going to happen because they won't do that.
No, they won't.
Imagine there's no guns. It isn't hard to do.
It's easy if you're a dem. Are you one of them? Yeah. So that was interesting, and and again, they this has been going on for a few months now. I don't know if anyone's up to speed with it, but I love the fact that they what did they do? They set up state of emergency, pseudo martial law, because a whole bunch of people are going to show up with guns and exercise their right to bear arms. So let's shut down the city. Let's bring out the National Guard. The state of emergency. Oh no, a good guy with a gun's going to come into town. It's like the whole weird, and nothing happened. Well, there was one arrest, but there was nothing happened. It's
wow. I closed my eyes.
It's just weird. It's not weird. We know what the agenda is, but yeah. So that went down yesterday. A lot of flat dark earth. A lot of guys came out dressed, all tacked out, ready to go. You know what? A lot of people.
The agenda. Wait. What is the agenda? See, maybe I don't know what you say. We all know what the agenda is. Maybe I don't know what the agenda is.
The agenda is for you not to be allowed to protect yourself.
Why not?
And bear arms. Well, because the government loves unarmed peasants.
The government loves unarmed peasants.
Right.
Why would they love an unarmed peasant?
Well, think of any other country that's existed in the last 100 years that has disarmed their populace. What then are they able to do at that point? They're able to do things to that population that wouldn't necessarily be good, which is why our founding fathers said we had inalienable rights. By God. God's given us these rights, and by golly, we're going to keep them. And that one of them was to protect yourself, besides, the pursuit of, happiness and all that groovy stuff. I love America. I am a patriot. I love the United States of America. I'm so grateful to have been born here, that I'm a citizen, blah, 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 blah. I love that. I've lived in the third world. One of the most interesting things I've experienced was at the age of 18. I was at the third anniversary of the revolution for the Sandinistas, and I was in Red Square in Nicaragua for that. I don't want to live in a country like that. I don't want to live in a country where your electricity and your water and your phone and, go out on occasion multiple times during the course of a day. Let's look at Israel for a second. Israel is the only first world nation in the entire region, and they've been around as such for 80 years? Everybody else has been around uninterrupted for a few thousand years, and they're not first world countries. Why are you chuckling over there?
Israel's only been around 80 years.
Well, as in its present state,
as a modern nation.
As a modern nation, everybody else knew what I was talking about, Mark.
No, I get it. I'm following you.
Well, they should, right? They come back to the land in the late 40s, and in less than 100 years, less than 60 years, heck, I think it was 40 or 50 years, they are able to establish themselves as a first world country. Nobody else in the region can say that. They can't make that claim.
Well, I don't know if you've ever seen the commercials regarding BDS and or the people have produced like documentaries and stuff like that saying, oh, you want to boycott Israel? Here's all of the things that you're going to have to give up. Cell phones and computer chips and medical equipment, stuff like that.
God forbid you have an emergency and have to go to the hospital.
Yeah, you're basically going to die if you do not use anything that comes from Israel.
Right.
Because they produce so much.
And that's the thing. The reason why the Arabs in the area have clean drinking water is because of Israel. I mean, I love what Mark Twain wrote in the 1800s. This place is a hole.
Did you see the pictures? There's actually pictures of
yeah.
What it looked like. Wow.
He's like, wow, what's the big deal about this place? This place is bad.
Yeah.
That's
what Mark Twain wrote. What Mark Smith wrote 80 years ago is
even more impressive. But see what I'm saying? And this is what happens when you leave squatters to run the place for 2,000 years. No, there's no pride of ownership. When the landlord came back, he went, what the heck? And within 40, 50 years brings it back to, well, like I said, they're a first world country. I don't like living in the third world. I have, and I will if the Lord tells me to do so. But all this to say, I really love this country. I love who we are and what we are. And apparently it's not even acceptable anymore to say things like that.
Do you think that you think at some point in time they'll ban baseball bats too?
They'll have to do knives first.
Knives and baseball bats, and hey, I mean, if you aren't familiar with that, watch the new Zombieland movie.
Oh my gosh. I've never been a fan of zombie movies ever, not even once in my entire life. But you know what? I do watch Walking Dead because, well, the zombie, not for the zombie aspect, but for the survival. Right. They're trying to keep it together. The little packs.
I can't watch anything with zombies, vampires, werewolves, because it all has to do with anti-God. In other words, it's like anti-dead and anti-God dead,
I don't know.
I can't watch them.
I didn't know you were going to make it all theological. I don't like all zombie movies because I think they're absolutely stupid.
Well, they are stupid, but I don't mind making it about God. I kind of live a life of, that's not wrong. Don't put me down because I.
Where are you? Let me give you a little pat.
What? I watch a lot of movies, dude.
I know. So I can't stand zombie movies, and I laugh at the zombiness of Walking Dead. But I like watching it for the societal thing and how they're trying to keep it together, and that's the only reason why I ever watched that show. But how did we get to zombies? How did we get from I love America, patriotism to zombies? What happened there?
I went on one of Allan's classic rabbit trails.
No, I brought it over to that because because I like Woody Harrelson. What? What?
We got the Rabbinator over there talking smack about me. Can we say Rabbinator now?
Rabbinator.
Can we say Rabbi rhymes with Terminator?
Rabbit. I like it.
There are some people who might think that.
Oh man,
that's a good one. Let's talk about flat Earth now.
Oh geez, it's like a pancake. Think of a pizza and a pancake in a pizza box.
What if it was more cylindrical like this?
Well, did you see the one about it's a donut?
That's not a donut.
All the cops are getting excited about that now.
See, and so you'd have like America and Mexico, Canada, Venezuela, all here on one side, and then Israel and Saudi Arabia and Lebanon, all of those on the other side. So now there's a movie made about the Earth being cylindrical, and it's like a flat Earth. See, like this, and in the movie, they actually drilled a hole through the middle of the Earth like that and ran elevators from one side to the other. And you wouldn't know that unless you watch movies like I do. I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's a flat Earth.
I can't say I saw that movie either.
You didn't see it?
I didn't see that movie.
I'm looking for the name of it, so if you saw it, I'd like to know. But that's actually what flat Earth is it's actually cylindrical like this.
Oh, well, there's that donut thing I mentioned earlier.
Well, now it's a donut.
Yeah. So the Torah portion this week is all about curses, isn't it?
Christmas.
It's all about Christmas. Pharaoh's birthday.
What'd you say about Christmas?
Is it Pharaoh's birthday?
So I mean, we don't want to actually talk about curses today, do we?
Oh, hold up! I have a call.
Hey, you might want to go live with that. It's turned into one of those shows. Yeah. Live calling. Live calling. You're talking with the Rabbinator, Darryl. How can I help you? No.
So actually the Torah portion does kind of line up with the whole Virginia thing.
Oh, let's see how you do this.
Well, in Exodus 7, it says, the Lord said to Moses, "See, I will make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall speak to Pharaoh that he let the sons of Israel go out of this land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that I may multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. When Pharaoh does not listen to you, then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring out my hosts, my people, my sons of Israel from the land of Egypt by great judgments. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch up my hand on Egypt and bring out the sons of Israel from their midst." And so we see here that God has already said that he was going to harden Pharaoh's heart. So it looks like Pharaoh is actually being set up here, that even if he wanted to repent, that there doesn't seem to be an opportunity for him. And we see that with what's going on. I mean, Virginia is really a test case for what the one world, the New World Order want to do to the United States. And so they because they've got a Democratic governor, and both the House and the Senate, the state Senate, are controlled by the Democrats. They run the show over there. So they're pushing forth this anti-Second Amendment agenda. And, how is it we got to this point where even 30 years ago, that the idea of disarming Americans would have been anathema? You even speak against the NRA and you would have been in big trouble. And now, because of all the false flag events. So how have we gotten to this point? Well, we've gotten to this point because America has gone so far away from God that now God is beginning to harden people's hearts where they are being. It's like in Ezekiel 38 or 39 when it's talking about Gog and Magog, and it says that he's going to put a hook in the jaw of Gog and bring them into Israel. And a lot of people believe that's Russia. So Russia is going to attack Israel. They're not going to have a choice in the matter because God is going to put a hook in their jaw. They're going to be led there to the slaughter. And I see this happening right now that, you know, here God is wanting, I mean, God brought in Donald Trump. And thank you very much, Jennifer, for your encouragement and regarding the message that I did last week. But God brought in a Jehu into the United States to break down the false system that had been set up by Jezebel. And Donald Trump was supposed to do that. He was supposed to take down the deep state. He was supposed to clean out the swamp. And yet we see him not acting on so many things. Why? Because the people don't want it. It's like there's so many people. How many is it? There was 42% of young people surveyed that believe socialism is a good thing in the United States. 42%.
That's insane.
How do you look at Venezuela right here? I mean, let's not talk about history. Let's not talk about Russia. Let's not talk about China.
Bolsheviks, yeah.
Talk about Eastern. Let's not talk about Cambodia, which is still, you know, within our lifetime. Let's not talk about that. Let's look at Cuba right now, and let's look at Venezuela. This is what you want. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, they're saying, and they can't eat. Why? Because you have a system that's based on the denial of God, and therefore God cannot bless it. And so no matter what man tries to do in the absence of God, it will fail. So this is happening right now, and yet this delusion has come over the United States where still all these people have bought in, and God has silenced, he has begun to silence the alternative media by allowing them to be shadow banned and ghosted and all those other new terms that everybody's got to look up now. The message isn't getting through, and I believe that Donald Trump is being hamstrung in his ability to do what he was called to do because the people don't want him, because their hearts have been hardened. And just like Pharaoh, I mean, when a supernatural entity starts imposing plagues on you, when a God who actually shows up and does something as opposed to their idols that they worship, when plague after plague, and okay, your magicians can do like the first 2 or 3, but after that they weren't even allowed to do it. The power got to the point where they weren't even, and even the magicians are saying, "Do you not know that Egypt is ruined?" Nope. Pharaoh's heart has been hardened because he had made his decision. And I see that happening right now with the United States, and I see it happening in Canada. That the people don't want it. And therefore their hearts are going to be hardened to the point where judgment has to come, and there's going to be no there's going to be no way out of it.
Thank you. There's a Mario Murillo. I don't know if you're familiar with the name Mario Murillo. Mm-hmm. Pretty popular guy. He's been around for a while. I like the guy. He was one of the first guys I was taken to go see him when I was in my little in my little backslidden pocket of time in the mid 80s. And he was kind to me, and it was good. Anyway, the idea is he's posted some stuff, and one of the first things he posted with this whole Trump presidency was we've been given a state of execution.
Yep.
And we as the church need to understand that and basically take back the territory that the enemy has stolen. Mm-hmm. Prayer, fasting, whatever. And meanwhile, Mark's changing his set while we're just having these chats. He's so, hold on a second. Come back. There's like, and he was like, look, this is what we need to be doing. And if we don't do this, it's, how many times have we seen this in the narrative, Old Testament narrative? God is going to pull back blessing and all that, and we're going to be worse off, or it's going to be bad, and he's been putting out these messages that have been kind of like a ticking time. The clock is ticking. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not taking advantage of the fact that God has given us a state of execution. Hey, and it's been accelerating, obviously, because, and so, like Lance mentioned a couple of weeks ago, he was saying, Lance Wallnow, how we need 1 million more people, or was it 100,000 more people, or 1 million more people to go vote that didn't vote last time if we're going to win again, because these people are very upset with us.
30 million Christians did not vote in the last election.
Yeah. They're very upset with the fact that we voted in a Trump. The fact that Trump's been president for the last 3 years is very upsetting to these people, and they're very angry with us. Mm-hmm. And they want to punish us for allowing this, what's the word, Blythe?
Yeah.
That we've allowed this blight in the history of our country by allowing this man to be president, and it's all our fault, and we're going to get you for doing that. They want to spank us. They want to punish us for allowing this to happen. And I think we don't know who we are. Absolutely, Jennifer. So much of what we talk about is based on our identity. And I've been writing a lot about identity in these devotionals for the next book, because it is so prevalent. We don't know who we are. And because we don't know who we are, we make the wrong decisions. We make the wrong, things happen. I absolutely agree with you, Darryl. We've been given a state of execution, and we are not being good stewards of it. And it's going to spank us. I mean, every good king, every king and every king of the North was bad, it says. Not a single one of them was godly. And I think only 8 out of the 14 Southern Kingdom kings were good. And so whenever a good king would do something, they never did it all the way. They always left the high places up or something. They did a half-assed job. And then shows up Josiah. Josiah shows up and he does the full job.
And not one of his sons honor the Lord.
And that's my point. Because we had a Josiah, right? Imagine living in the time of Josiah, and we're watching him invite all the prophets of Baal and Ashtoreth to parties, and then, right? He's eliminating the demonicness of that's in the land, as we were instructed to do from the very beginning. And he's doing it. And
Hezekiah came close. I mean, Hezekiah was considered to be righteous. I mean,
right.
He stumbled with the pride a little bit, and
right. But that's why I said the other good kings did a half-assed job. But Josiah does the full enchilada. So imagine living during the time of Josiah and watching this, right? He's taking care of business. He's draining the swamp. He's cleaning house. He's taking care of this stuff. But then as soon as he dies, and I'm still alive, it goes right back to where we were.
Even if you look at the priests, so after they kill Athaliah, who was Ahab's daughter, so like I mentioned in my message, this past Shabbat, the spiritual stain of Ahab and Jezebel had even crept into the kingdom of Judah, because Jehoshaphat had married Athaliah, which was Ahab's daughter. So right. Now you've got that strain, that demonic strain that's going through the southern kingdom, and it's going to destroy it. So anyway,
and there's an actual reproof by Elijah, I think, regarding Jehoshaphat, regarding that.
Jehoshaphat was a great king, except that he had no discernment, zero discernment. He he wants to serve the Lord. He's doing great things. God honors him. God blesses him. And yet he keeps getting hooked up with all the bad people, wants to hang out with the bad kids.
He is doing that.
Yeah. So anyway, so Jehu, destroys that line. So Jehoiada, the priest, they end up killing Athaliah, and they put was it Jehoram, the king, when he was 8 years old, 7 years old, and he serves the Lord, it says, as long as Jehoiada was priest. The moment Jehoiada dies, so here he is, he's been serving the Lord. You see him, he is fixing the temple, he's rebuking the priests for not doing their job and everything else. The moment Jehoiada dies, it says that the princes came and they bowed down to him, and immediately he turns. What happens? How is it that you can serve the Lord for that long, watch God bless you, and that the moment, and this is the part that whenever I read the history of the kings of Israel, when I see Amaziah, for instance, and he goes and has a victory in Edom, okay, defeats the Edomites, brings back their gods, and starts worshiping. It's like, wait a minute. Not only are you trained in Torah, not only do you know that you're not supposed to do this, you went and got the gods of the very people that those gods couldn't even protect, and you're still going to bow down to them. It's like, it boggles my mind to see how people do this stuff.
I know.
So how is it, why, it's the question I want to ask, why is it so hard to get a continuity and have that zealousness for God to continue generationally? Why is it, guys? I mean, you're looking all through the history. Samuel, there wasn't one thing that Samuel did wrong. His kids ended up being corrupt, and that's why Israel demanded a king. Why is it David, a man after God's own heart? Okay, I mean, he had issues with lust and stuff like that.
He was a regular guy, but he honored the Lord and he repented.
Yeah. But his son Solomon turns away from God and invites all these pagan women because he was after the dark knowledge. And you look at person after person. Hezekiah, righteous king. It says they buried him in the upper levels of the tombs of the kings of Israel. His son becomes the most wicked king in all of Israel's history.
I literally am writing about this the last week because of what's going on. And
there's actually only one guy that I can see in all of Scripture that actually managed to pass it down and have it increase. And that was Abraham.
Abraham, yeah. And
how is it that the blessing and the promise and the devotion to God continue when all of these other guys, Samuel, Hezekiah, Josiah, all of these guys, they did their best. They loved the Lord. They served him. They were zealous for him. And their kids went, forget it. I got to be honest with you. It concerns me. It scares me a little.
It should. So I'm ahead of you regarding this. My son is 31.
Yeah.
And by the time he turned 17, I remember telling him when he was 12, don't go that way, go this way. If you go this way, this is what's going to happen. If you go this way, this is what's going to happen. And within 5 years, we're at a, precarious place. And I ended up doing what most people don't do. And that's, I actually went to the Lord and I went, okay, what did I do? What did I do? What did I not do? What did I say? What did I not say? How have I allowed this to continue in my line? And as soon as I said that, right, because most people won't pray that way. They'll pray, oh, what's happened to my kid? They don't take the responsibility. Anyway, that's how I prayed. And as soon as I prayed like that, the Lord started showing to me, guess what he did? Floodgates open. He started showing me what I did and did not do, what I did and did not say to allow this to continue in my line. Mm-hmm. And so I started hacking away at that list. And that's when my son said, hey, I need to go to Cyprus. And anyway, it's been difficult, it's been challenging. But here's what I can say. I'm looking just because I'm thinking I want to, I don't want to uncover my son, but here's what I can say. regardless of what's happened, how it's happened, what's played out, how it's played out, my kids have always come back to repentance in the Father. It's rich. We've instilled a value and a richness of the desires of the things of the Lord that no matter what the ups and downs have been, I can call him up right now. And, I saw my son this morning. He wants to serve the Lord. He has a heart to serve the Lord. And I can talk to my youngest daughter, and she has a heart to serve the Lord. She wants to serve the Lord. Our oldest daughter. So this last weekend was my youngest daughter's birthday weekend. So our baby's 30. Yikes. Yeah. And so they went to Vegas. So her and her mom and her older sister flew out there, and my wife's friend, school friend from Guatemala that we know. Anyway, and they did like a girls' weekend in Vegas. That means my oldest daughter's baby, who's like 13 months old, is at home with dad in Dallas. Well, she gets sick, and so my daughter has to fly back early, and so they were in the hospital the last couple of days. I mean, in fact, I think they're still there. But we discerned that this was generational. It happened to me, and when it happened to my oldest daughter, that's what snapped me out of my slumber. And I remember going, look, I've made the choices that I've made to do what I'm doing. And I've written about this. I've talked about this. I didn't serve the Lord out of the fear of the responsibility of the calling on my life. So I thought, well, I'll just go out there and I'll just go disqualify myself. That way he can't use me. That didn't work out very well. In that period of time, we had a baby, and she started manifesting sickness and having to take her to the doctor. And the doctors were like, everything's fine. We don't know why and I'm like, and as soon as that happened, right? As soon as they said, everything's fine, we don't know why she's sick, I realized, oh, this is what happened to me when I was a year old with parents that had no understanding of spirituality. And so I went, oh, this is what's going on. So it's like, it's one thing for me to make the choices that I'm making and living the way I'm living. It's another thing for you, an adult, my girlfriend at the time, because we weren't married, you've chosen to live with me in this state, in this, where we are. But this baby is innocent. She's got no, this is happening to her. This isn't a choice she's made. And this is happening to her because it's generational. And I recognize this and I see it. And that really snapped us out of our slumber and got us to, okay, we need to repent. We need to come back to the Lord. We need to repent, at least for the life of this child, so we can raise her up in the Lord, because otherwise she's fodder for the enemy. That's not acceptable. And so we did. And we came back to the Lord, and we've raised our kids in the Father, in the Lord, and all that. So our granddaughter, so it's now we're talking about the firstborn of the firstborn, and she's sick. The doctors are like, we don't know what's wrong with her. So we discerned this. I was even asking the question, are we sure she's just sick, or is this what's going on? So we discerned that this is what was going on. So she had the leadership of her church. She goes to a really good church that's really powerful, supernatural, all that. Had the elders show up, and of course, I've been praying. We've been praying. We've all been praying for this. But a lot of times you have to step outside of yourself, to get that type of breakthrough, deliverance, or whatever you want to call it. So they showed up and they prayed for her last night. And, there was stuff, and it was good. And so she's doing a lot better today, obviously. But so we actually had this conversation as a family last night. Why is this still there? Why has this been? We broke it. And I'm looking at the narrative, because I'm so immersed in the narrative of Israel right now, and have been for like the last 3 or 4 years. Sometimes that generational thing, I can't say that it's not cut off, but sometimes we have to go through. It's almost like you're going to have to go through this just because type of thing. You know what I mean by that? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
For example, we know that whatever was going on with Abraham was pretty much, I mean, there's an angel, going back to what you were saying, there's an angel that was walking with Abraham that he was able to transfer to Isaac, that also blessed Isaac. But then Isaac is also lying about his wife, like his father did.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as they have this generational blessing, and not only that, they literally have an angel that's being like transferred and walking and guiding them and blessing them. And even Jacob has it. But Isaac is still caught in a generational loop of sorts that he has to deal with. So I'm wondering if that's what that is. Because we're talking about, okay, when Eliora is 13 months old. When she has a child, we'd like for her to have to avoid this. I had to go. It happened to me. I had to deal with it. Now my daughter's dealing with it. It's not that it's. It's not that it's not broken. I just think that maybe there's sometimes these factors have to occur just as, I don't know. I don't want to use the word rite of passage, but I don't know. I don't know what else. It's like that, but I wouldn't call it rite of passage. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. Okay, my opinion is I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
Without living through what you're going through and thinking of, while you're talking about this, I'm trying to think of different scenarios in the Bible. I don't necessarily see it. I could see, like you have, if you want to study it out and figure out that particular thing, I can see it personally. I'm not there.
Yeah.
But in the same way, I mean, if I can explain my children, my wife had 2 boys before we got together, and they were 11 and 12 when my wife and I get together. Now, she was married to my first cousin. They were in a car accident, and when the boys were a year and 8 months, he died. She raised them. We got together when they were 11 and 12. Now, she did not raise them in the Lord at all. And yet still to this day, even though I came in and we went to church, we had our daughter. And when our daughter was 3 months old, even though we were going to church, we came across the Messianic lifestyle. My daughter has been living in the Messianic lifestyle since she was 3 years old. Now, my daughter, the boys don't want to have anything to do with religion whatsoever at all, but my daughter could not serve the Lord more than she is serving right now and has since she was 3 years old. But we raised her in the admonition of the Lord, knowing about the Lord, but we didn't push it on her. In other words, she just lived the lifestyle because we lived the lifestyle. And it was not when you get old, you have to do this. And when she got 14, 15, 16, when they start, getting the point of where they're going to make their own stand, she was making her own stand with the Lord. And we actually moved to Oklahoma. We sold our house, picked up everything, and moved to Oklahoma so we could be a part of a Messianic community. So that when our daughter, literally, this was the number one reason on a list of 12 things why we were going to move. I made up a list, positive and negative. That was the number one thing, was to get our daughter where she could be a part of the Messianic community. When she got to the point of dating and marrying, she would be able to be a part of that community. She she dated a lot of Messianic guys and married a Christian guy. which is okay because he had such a heart for the Lord. It's like, what do you guys know that I don't know? And today, the guy even stands up at the pulpit at Lion Lamb, not Lion Lamb Ministries, the offshoot of Lion Lamb that they do. And he gets up and he reads off the Torah portion on a regular basis. And he is a major part of this, has his own ministry, has taught on the Lamb Network. And my daughter is raising her 2 boys that way. Now, I don't know about generations, but I can see where our 2 boys don't want to have anything to do with the Lord. Right. Never did from day one. But our daughter, like I say, could not serve the Lord more than she serves the Lord today. Right. And so, I see it. I also, and this is Brad Scott talks about this a lot, is that he and I have both been in the Messianic lifestyle over 25 years now. We've been living this lifestyle. We have been in the hubbub of all the big teachers, the conferences, the Sukkots, everything. We've been a major part of this for 25 years, and we've seen them come and go. We have watched children like my daughter grow up, and some of them are serving the Lord, and some of them don't want to have anything to do with the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So how do you, and they were all raised. Of course, we can't see what happened at home, right? But we can see what happened in public. So you wonder, these are people that were living the same lifestyle, going to the same things that we were. Why are that my daughter's friends are not serving God, but my daughter is? Why? I don't know about generational curses, but it's a tough question to answer.
Yeah, and we've dealt with we know. I'm thinking we probably know a little bit more than you about that stuff, but it's still, there's, what is the issue? Somebody's asking if that's what we're talking. Yeah, we are talking about generational curses, generational bloodlines. That does come into play.
But the question we're really trying to define is, how is it that you can have a parent and a family that walks in righteousness and have children turn away like that?
Right. Here's right. And I have that verse that talks about if you can't manage your own house, how can you manage the house of God? If you're a leader and your kids are spawns of Satan, you probably shouldn't be leading, right? Man, I have taken that so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how seriously I have taken that verse.
How seriously have you taken it?
Oh my gosh. It's ever before me. I've really taken it seriously. And you know what I think probably really serious. I had one of my pastors tell me this, I think it was before we moved to Utah. So it was like 8 to 10 years ago. He goes, have you ever considered the 12 patriarchs? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, what does that say about God as a father when those 12 guys are probably some of the worst guys going? And I was like, I've never looked at it that way.
Well, that's why we know about them, is because the Lord's showing us, hey, I don't call anybody that's perfect. I'm not, have you ever known me to call somebody into ministry that's perfect? Look at the 12 children of Israel.
These guys are like really messed up guys. The majority of them are way messed up. They're like they're talking about killing their brother. They're ditching their brother in a pit. They're selling them off to freaking Ishmaelites. This is bad stuff.
Joseph was the only one that had a heart for God, at least at the beginning. Anyhow, you see Judah come around later on.
Yeah, but we're talking like decades.
Yeah,
like whole lives. bands.
So you have Abraham, you have Isaac, you have Jacob. The blessing continues to grow, and all of a sudden you get the 12 sons. And because of the way Jacob operated, I mean, from the very time he came out of the womb, grabs his. I mean, he's called a
yeah,
and he's a conniver. You know, his mother kind of eggs him on a bit, but he went in there willingly. He didn't argue too much and say, "Oh no, you know, I'm going to wait until the Lord gives this to me." And so he ends up going through all of this difficulty in his life to get him to the point where instead of negotiating, saying to God, "Well, if you give me this, give me that, give me the other thing, then you'll be my God and all." Right. To 20 years later, he says, "I'm done unless you show up."
Yeah.
But he sowed that into them. The favoritism, the conniving, the lying, the everything else, and even after Jacob dies,
and he dies prophetically, right? I mean, he's prophesying.
Yeah. But as soon as he dies, then all of the sons of Israel start going back to fear again. They're still not trusting in God. They're still sending emissaries to Joseph saying, "Don't take it out on us." Like, hasn't this guy proven to you after all this? What do you think that he was sitting there waiting? Like a possum for Jacob to die before he took you. The dude was prime minister of Israel or Egypt. He could have taken them out at any point in time.
Yeah. And
he chose not to, and he still has to explain to them. So even after Jacob dies, they still don't get it.
Yeah. Because people project what they would do on others.
Oh.
See, that's what I would do. So we're afraid you're going to do that to us. Because not only is that what we would do, we already did that to you. All of that stuff plays in. I mean, it's like string theory. I mean, we can't just nail it. It's all,
It's like string theory.
So how is it? And
I love it.
I want to go back to Hezekiah for a sec here. Hezekiah, I mean, he loved the Lord. He comes from just an idiot for a father. I mean, King Ahaz was just, this guy, not only was he evil, he was dumb as a rock. Like I read this guy's story and I just can't believe how dumb that guy really was. And the moment, Hezekiah is 25 years old, he becomes king. Immediately he goes to start cleaning up his father's mess. And he restores temple worship. In the first year that he's king, in like the second month, they hold this massive Passover Seder. It said it hadn't been done since the days of Solomon or whatever it was. And after, and in 2 Chronicles 30, it says that as soon as they kept the Passover Seder, that they went out and they started tearing down the idols and the altars. And so revival breaks out in Israel and everything else. And when people read...
remind me to bring up revival when you're done. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, he reigns for quite a few years. But it says that Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king. So Hezekiah dies after the 15 years. And a lot of people think that, well, had Hezekiah not gone to the Lord and prayed for a continuance, that Manasseh wouldn't have been born. But if you look at how the timelines line up, there is suggestion that Manasseh was co-regent with Hezekiah for about 10 years. So right before Hezekiah is supposed to die, before he gets his extension, Manasseh probably already was born. So he started to reign with his father at 12. And when Hezekiah dies, he's already 22 years old. So not only does Manasseh watch Hezekiah serve the Lord, but he reigns with him for 10 years and is brought and is discipled by him for 10 years. And the moment Hezekiah dies, that guy goes full on into Satanism, witchcraft, occultism. My question is, what happened? Yeah. How is it that happened? You look in history, Karl Marx grew up in a Messianic home, becomes a 33rd degree Mason, and starts the communist philosophy and stuff like that. Karl Marx. He grew up in a Messianic home. He was Jewish. His parents were Lord. Same thing with Russell started the Jehovah's Witnesses. He actually grew up in a believing home.
Yeah.
So how is it all these people now? Granted, I mean Charles Russell, his parents were fire and brimstone teachers.
Yeah.
Aleister Crowley, apparently his parents went to church and he grew up in a believing home. And that guy did everything possible to thumb his nose at God.
Right. Well, here's what I've seen in 40 years of doing this thing. But I want to address the question here. If we are in Yeshua, then where does this leave these generational curses? This is part of the work of seeking out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Just because you got saved, just because you're saved, doesn't mean these things haven't been taken care of or they haven't been resolved. A lot of people don't even know about this stuff, so they don't even know where to look or even, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't know about these type of things. They're not taught these things. They don't go to churches that deal with these things.
Yeah.
And so they go unresolved. And then you start wondering, well, why? Right? Because then think of a Christian person that you know that is constantly cycling out or constantly is in poverty or is constantly sick or is constantly whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those are manifestations of these things that they haven't been dealt with, and they'll live and die without ever dealing with it or without ever knowing. Again, depending on what kind of church you've grown up in, what kind of denominational background you have, will determine a lot of this stuff, which is one of the main reasons why we do this show, is to expose people to these things because they don't know about this stuff. If you remember the show I did with Kim, we talked about a lot of this stuff, and we need to have Kim back on here, maybe with the three of us, because it's good information. There's a lot of, we have been taught as Christians that once you get saved, you've somehow all that's gone. That's just not true. It's just not true.
Oh dear God, it would be so easy if that was the case.
Oh my gosh, right? I mean, look at Paul. Paul got saved and he disappeared for like 14 years. It's called a spiritual enema, to flush all that stuff out.
Yet he still went through trials, tribulations, and sickness.
Yeah.
He still went through sickness until the day he died.
Yeah.
So why couldn't he just lay hands on himself?
Right. Hey, and you know what? One of these days we should maybe talk about, is he the apostle to Asia Minor mentioned in Revelations that went false? We should have that conversation. We never have.
We got multiple episodes to go in the future.
Golly, that's a hard one. That's a difficult one. Anyway, so yes, you can be a Christian 10, 15, 35 years and never have deliverance from these things, have generational ties, bloodlines, whatever. Now, back to what we're talking about.
We're dancing.
Here's what I've seen. The majority of ministry-based children don't come out alive. If you were born and raised in ministry, your pastor's kids, missionary kids, right? A lot of those kids don't make it.
PK. If this didn't happen, we wouldn't have the expression PK.
Right.
Yeah.
If we, a lot of those kids, when I got saved, I got saved in my uncle. I was sent to live with a missionary uncle. So I'm surrounded by missionary kids of every denominational. I married a missionary kid. Pastors' kids, leadership kids, church kids. I never knew a church kid in my life. And then all of a sudden I'm surrounded by them literally overnight. And I'm like 15, 16 years old. I was about to turn 16 and I'm a drug addict. I do drugs, sex, drugs, rock and roll. So it was quite the culture shock. But I've watched, and they were all interested. They were all, and then I got saved. And so now I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to get my Christian legs, because I've never been a Christian. I wasn't born in a Christian home. These guys have been doing this they were raised in this, right? and they're absolutely fascinated with my past life. They're fascinated with my sex story, my sex life. They're fascinated with my drug life. They're fascinated with my worldly life, right? They were more interested in what I did in the world before coming to Jesus than my coming to Jesus. And I always thought that was weird. And it would take me a while to figure out why that was the case. They were absolutely fascinated with the dark side. Well, if that's the case, and we
side, Luke.
These are not the all right. And if that's the case, and it is the case, I've seen it. What happens to them when they turn 18 and they leave their mom and dad's house?
See ya.
They go BS crazy. See how I just answered myself?
Let me interject here, because realistically, a lot of the reasons for that, I think, based on experience and seeing other people, what they do is they hold that back from their children. They don't allow their children, once they become of an age where they can understand these things, they are forbidden to see these things, and they talk to their children in a way their children can't understand. Whereas in my family, we didn't hold it back, but we didn't present it in the dark side way.
Sure.
And to our daughter, we let her know that these were, and there were some Disney movies. She still says today, "Mom, Dad, you didn't let me watch this Disney movie. It's a great movie today."
Right.
It's like,
our kids could tell you all about that. Yeah, we were not allowed to watch all that sorcery and witchcraft.
Exactly. But when it came on, or when she got older, it's like, no big deal.
Right.
That, but because we didn't hold that back from her.
Right. Here's what I saw happening around us. So we're raising our kids in Christianity, right? We're youth group, church, pastor, and the Christian kids and their Christian friends and all that. And we were getting a lot of flack from the other parents and the leadership because of the way we raised our kids. We raised our kids differently than they did. We weren't as heavy-handed or legalistic or religious about it. We had absolutes, though. No, you can't watch that. No, you can't listen to that. No, you can't do that. You can't wear that. You can,
any other parent, whether you're religious or not.
Right. Here's what the differences were. We were too liberal in how we were raising our kids to the Christians around us. And we're like, no, we actually have relationship. We actually have discernment. We're actually, here's why we're doing what we're doing, and here's why you don't like the way we're doing it. Because the other parents were like, the majority of the Christians that I went to school with when I got saved, their parents, they were not allowed to listen to secular music. They weren't allowed to. It was really heavy-handed. And so when they turn 18, it's pastors' kids or missionary kids gone wild. And they go to college, they go to a Christian college. That's the worst thing to do, is send your Christian kid to a Christian college, because then all bets are off. So when we raised our kids, we had relationship and conversation. We actually were hands-on. We walked with our kids. We didn't just go, here's the youth group, see ya, like the other parents did. And so those other kids were more susceptible to the rebellion and not that ours weren't, but ours, because here we are, right? Here we are, literally 30 years later, and I know all their friends from when they were growing up and where they're at now as adults and parents themselves. They're not on the right side of things when it comes to the things of the Lord, or even saved themselves. Our kids are. Our kids still are. And no matter how many bumps or pitfalls they've had or whatever, they've always come back to the Lord, because there's a grounding foundation there that we helped build. But it was the way and manner that we built it, which was unlike everyone else around us. We actually, it was more spiritual. I'm going to say more spiritual, obviously, than it was religious, because we're not afraid of the world. My wife and I, we've lived real lives. We're not afraid of the world. We're not afraid of the occult. We're not afraid of the enemy. We're not afraid of the dark side. We're not afraid of everything that Christians are afraid of that they instill in their children. See, adults are just grown-up kids, right? And so they don't know how to navigate the world, the occult, darkness, supernatural stuff, spirituality, anything that's demonic, or they don't know how to do any of this stuff. And so they propagate. It's this perpetual propagation with their children.
When
the Old Testament narrative.
When my wife became a believer, she got saved around 27, and she started hanging out with different Christian groups, and she was introduced to a group that was part of a brethren congregation, Open Brethren. And one of the things that she said was that as she was kind of sharing her testimony, I mean, if you've seen her testimony, she essentially came to faith when she was a counselor at a Jewish camp, and she was just kind of sitting there, looking at the sunset and everything else, and all of a sudden the understanding that God had created all this came to her, and she was just like, she gets the jolt, and God says, now you're going to go to this church and everything else. So she starts getting plugged into these various groups. But one of the things that she found when she went to this youth group, or young adults group, wasn't youth, a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds. And she says that when she used to talk about her testimony and how she came to faith, she says none of them could reciprocate and talk about their experience with God. They had no understanding, or they couldn't give a testimony of how they had an encounter. They grew up in the church and they just kind of went along. It was just part of their culture, but they never had a direct encounter. There was only one guy who did, and that's because his brother had drowned in a swimming accident at about 15. And so one of the things that Milena said was that I could never marry one of these guys because they have no understanding. They have no encounter with God. And she says, because of my past and the fact that I lived in the world for so long, that how could I possibly share life with someone who didn't struggle through these things, who didn't go through these things. And so one of the things that she said is, I have to have a husband who got saved later on, because he knows what it means to go from that life into the new life. And so it'll mean more. And so when we were introduced, I mean, that was one of the things, is that we both had that in common. We both got saved right around the same age. I was 28, she was 27 when she got saved. And so we both had lived in the world, and we both remember how much the world really sucked. Whereas someone who grows up in a Christian culture, who's a PK or whatever, they're so inoculated from all that. Then when all of a sudden they step out into the world, they've got no defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's like, people who use antibacterial soap and have this super clean. Well, your body doesn't get to build up any defenses.
That's a great analogy. I didn't let my kid play in the dirt or eat dirt, so his immune system's shot, and now he's sick with everything.
Right.
It's the same exact thing. Wow.
When you're completely protected from the world and the world system, when there's no exposure to it, and there are still things that I have no idea how to share with my son yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're still kind of working on that, and I'm kind of waiting for the right time and whatnot, and I got to figure these things out. But the reality is we talk with him about almost everything. Mm-hmm. And probably some things we talk to him about that we shouldn't talk to him about. There are things that, this is adult level. But, Jennifer brought up to train up a child in the way he should go. When he is older, he will not depart from it. Yeah. You have to lay that foundation. But that foundation must be built and continually added to. And that foundation includes experiencing, if you protect your kids from all the things that you went through, how are they going to deal with it when they encounter it in the world and you're not there to hold their hand anymore?
I mean, I'm trying to explain this stuff without sounding so, egotistical or arrogant or whatever. And that's really hard for me. But No, it's true. But here's what I'm trying to say. We literally did everything the exact opposite of what Christianity tells you to do. I mean, literally. I mean, I remember we were, so my kids were 4, 6, and 8 when we moved to Dallas. And that first year we met a family, and they were talking about, the guy was just talking about his like 12 or 13-year-old daughter, totally, completely inappropriately, but not that type of inappropriately, but like, I don't trust her as far as I can throw her, you'll see. And I'm like,
why are you cursing your daughter?
Right. That's what I mean by inappropriately.
Yeah.
And I told the guy, I'm like, but this is your work.
Yeah.
This is your handiwork.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And he goes,
his response is, no, my wife raised her.
Yeah.
And he literally said, I don't trust my daughter as far as I can throw her. And she's standing right there. And I'm just like, oh, this poor thing. And then he goes, you'll see. And I go, no, you'll freaking see, buddy. I'm working my ass off to make sure when my kids turn 18, they don't say, F you and your God, Dad. Because that means I just failed 18 years of my life.
Yeah.
This is on me. The success or failure of my marriage is on me. I've been saying that for 30 years. The success or failure of my family is on me. I've been saying that for 30 years. They were telling me 30 years ago, oh, you'll see. You're only saying that because you don't know. And I'm like, no, get behind me, Satan.
Well,
and so we did literally the exact opposite of what everybody else did. And that did not make us popular. That did not make us popular with the other parents at church or the youth pastors. Here's a horrible, horrible story that I heard a few years ago. A family here in Utah that used to go to the church that we came here to serve left that church when their kids were like 12 years old because they didn't have a proper youth group. Well, there's your first mistake, Mom, Dad. You're going to rely and depend on a youth group to raise your children in the Lord. That's your freaking job.
Mm-hmm.
So they leave this church because they didn't have a proper youth group, and they spent literally the next 6 to 8 years chasing churches based on teenage youth group programs or youth groups.
Right.
And so we ran in. I remember meeting this family years ago when the kids were probably right before they left this church, the one that we came to serve. And I saw, we ran into them when we first moved here 7 years ago. Oh, they reintroduced themselves. They came over to our house once for some reason, maybe a Hanukkah party or something. How's it going? Not good, Mom says. We just spent the last 6 or 8 years basically chasing churches to facilitate the raising of our children so that our children would be raised in the Lord. And they both don't, and they're both in college. They hate God. They hate their mom and dad. They're involved with drugs, sex, the occult. I mean, the exact opposite of what they were trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bet you not one time did they ever go to that youth group to find out what that youth group really was teaching. Yeah,
they obviously don't have any.
That right there is there's a survey out there that says, why do you go to this particular church when there's a church on every corner of your town? Why do you pick this one? The number 2 reason is because they have a good youth group.
Stupid.
Serious.
So, the mom starts crying and we're like at a Hanukkah party here at our house or something, and she starts crying and telling me how her kids just, and I'm like, oh my God. Well, guess what's happened since then? She's left the dad. So here we are. Smoke clears. Mom and dad are divorced. The kids don't know Jesus. They're absolutely spawns. And all of this was started when they left a certain church to go find a church with a youth group so that their kids would be raised in the Lord. Everything about that is just so wrong. One, dad didn't lead his home. I mean, this is like textbook. Dad wasn't the priest of his home, wasn't leading his wife and kids. Mom and dad weren't raising their kids. They were depending on the church to do so. They start bouncing around to churches to take care of this thing for their kids. And when the smoke clears, they're in college doing drugs and the occult and sex, and they're not serving God, and now they're divorced. This happens a lot.
Well, and this is the whole reason why this men's discipleship group that we're going to be starting in a couple of weeks is how to teach men to be a priest in their home.
That's actually on my list to write that book.
Well, you'll have to join us for our Sunday night meetings because this is
maybe that's the one we do together.
I'm in it. We'll do it.
It is so. I can't even tell you how important this is.
Because, and just kind of going back to men's discipleship. Every time I hear about a men's discipleship, I hear about a breakfast meeting.
Oh, geez.
They get together for breakfast. 2 weeks ago, I went to. We have something called the Canadian Christian Business Federation. So it's
hold on a second. What's that movie with Michael Douglas? And he goes, "I don't do lunch. Lunch is for wimps." Same thing. Breakfast meetings. I don't do breakfast meetings.
So I go to the Canadian Christian Business Federation meeting, and
that sounds scary.
Well,
there's too many consonants there.
I know that. So, and it's basically the Christian business people in the area get together. They do it once a month. They have a kind of a curriculum that's sent out. So on this week, we studied this principle, and it's, it's very basic level stuff, but at least it's getting people fellowship and you get a chance to do some networking. So afterward, I show up to our first meeting down here in the Niagara area, my first meeting. And afterward, there's a young guy who served on city council. Okay, it's probably late 20s, and he actually served on city council. He, was heavily involved in politics. And so after the meeting's over and everybody's left, he and I are the only ones left. And he starts asking me a bunch of questions. He says, "You're a Messianic Jew?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What's the main difference?" And I talked about, leading the Messianic lifestyle, keeping the commandments, things like that, and Shabbat instead of Sunday. And so he thought, well, that's very interesting. And then he asks me, as we're just kind of getting ready to leave, he says, I'm a Freemason, and I would really be interested in you coming to the lodge to explain the temple, because, we like to have different people, I know some Christians have a problem with Masonry. He kind of just swept it by. And I'm looking at him, it's just like, they're trying to recruit me here. And he, and I said, well, what level are you? Third. So this guy knows nothing about nothing about nothing. And yet here he is involved in the very thing that's the opposite of what we're supposed to believe in. And it's because nobody has any discernment. Where are the churches today talking about? As a matter of fact, I would suggest probably at least a quarter of the churches in this area are run by the Freemasons. Like, it's just, there's no discernment out there. So how is it that if you're going to be mixing this stuff, if you're going to be blending it in, you're going to allow that spiritual stain to get in there, and that, polluting of we're supposed to be a holy convocation. We're supposed to be separate from the stuff. How can you let the devil walk in and then not say anything? And then you wonder why your families blow up. Then you wonder why all of these things. And so as we're doing this, getting together once a month with other Christian business people and doing a bare basics Bible study is better than nothing. Okay, you're not going to get a whole lot done there. But when one of the guys told me about this men's group, I'm thinking, I hear all about these men's groups, and every church group that I hear about, the men, basically what they do is they get together for a breakfast once in a while, and they eat bacon, and then they'll talk about whatever for an hour. And that's the sum total. There's no accountability. There's no discussion of spiritual warfare. There's nothing about our identity in Messiah. On Shabbat, I talked about, and Jennifer's spoken about it. We everything that we focus on in churchianity today is what we do and how we do it. There's no acknowledgement of who God is, what he's done, and who we are in him.
Yeah.
If you don't cover those first three things, what we do and how we do it is absolutely irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it includes being parents. It includes being husbands. If the men don't rise up and become priests of their home and start being the spiritual leaders, you can stand up. It's okay. My wife is trying to keep.
You're doing the army crawl? Is your wife doing the army crawl right now?
Yeah. She almost had a knife in her mouth there. Just going to the enemy.
It's like that news correspondent, and this baby walks into the office, and the wife's like crawling to grab the baby, and he's live like on CNN or something. Oh my gosh!
BBC.
Not that important.
But so anyway,
and Yoshi has no problem at all.
Oh no, he's never met a camera he didn't like. So
too many cameras, so little time.
Yeah. So anyway, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be getting the men together, and we're going to have a meeting here every other week, and then there will be a teaching every week. So we'll kind of discuss some topics, make it for an open forum roundtable thing, and then go into more detail on just the virtual broadcast the following week, where the men aren't gathering together to go deeper into those topics. And I this is what God has laid upon me. He said, there isn't even a desire on my part to set up a weekly fellowship at this point.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing. We're going to do the men's fellowship and discipleship, and we're going to start whipping the men into shape down here, because man, oh man.
I've talked about the time I spent at this really, really bad church that God had us go to. After year 3, we started begging him to release us, and he didn't. And we were there for like 6 more years. We were there like 9 years. Anyway, but their men's group, I would pop in like every 2 or 3 years. I'd just show up, and it was horrible because it was the same guys, no growth. And they all kept, and they were confessing the same sin that they did every week for years. And I would just sit there cringing at the thought that this is happening every week, whether I'm here or not, and that they're all like literally, porn or whatever. And they're not, no one's challenging them to repentance. It's like, stop doing that, Joe. Okay, Joe, you're not going to stop doing it? You kick them out.
And the same people keep coming down to be laid hands on for the same stinking headache that they've had, their shoulder hurts for the past 42 weeks, the whole thing. The church I go to on Sunday, they're average about 650 people per service, and they have this big line right up against the building where handicap parking is. I say, let's get rid of the handicap parking. It's like, yes, let's lay hands on everybody and get this done and get rid of that. So regular people, well, then I wouldn't be able to, because I have a handicap deal that I can do.
But it's like, it was like, you're not holding these men accountable. You're not holding them to any sort of standard of God. You're letting them come back here every week with repenting of the same sin every week. That is so irresponsible. Yeah. It's mind blowing. And it's like, and I would show up every 2 or 3 years and it was just like brutal. Oh, you should come back next week. Why? Joe's going to be doing porn all week, and he's going to tell us about it next week. There's no need for me to come here. or you go to their breakfast meetings, right? I remember visiting a friend, and he took me to his men's breakfast meeting. So we show up to this meeting, and it's your typical men's breakfast meeting. All bacon, no God. And afterward, he asked me, "So what'd you think?" I go, "Well, my breakfast was really good." And he goes, "Well, no, what?" I'm like, "You guys didn't talk about anything. God never showed up. You didn't talk about anything. Nothing happened." He got really insulted. You can't do this. I can't hang out with Christians because I insult them, because I'll ask the hard question or I'll bring up the obvious.
I love it. We got way off there, and the subject is that still on
still same subject.
Raising our kids, all bacon, no God, breakfast.
Oh my gosh! So people are calling this number you told them to call, and you're not answering it.
I've got a Google Voice number here, and I've been trying. I messed with it all week. We tried it; it works. I'm trying to get it so people can call into the show, and nobody will call that number. So
well, apparently 3 people have called. You're just not answering. You're just not answering the number.
I'm not hearing it ring. We tried it this past week. It worked fine.
Turn the ringer on.
All I have to do is bring Google Voice up. I don't have to turn a ringer on. It just answers. So I don't know what the deal is.
You know what the deal is? Here's the deal. You like that?
Oh, here we go. It's answering. Here we go. Hello.
How's it going there?
All right. Very good. Can you guys hear?
Hey, look at Mark's Alexander Graham Bell.
Watson.
Who we talking to?
This is Clark from out in Canada.
Awesome. Can you guys hear this going through?
You have to raise the volume.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to raise the volume. I'm trying to.
That audio should be fed into your system. You need the Zoom L8. It's a little board, $400. Take care of that. Like that.
Sure, I'll get right on that one. Hold up, Clark. Okay, I'm turning.
I don't hear them speaking though. I can only hear you now.
Oh, really?
No problem.
Okay, well, I can tell you what they said. Yeah.
Mark will have to. Here, I'll do this. Mark will have to get back with us once he figures out how to work this system. They can't hear us. We can't hear them.
It's all good.
Hey, I gotta have a way to try it out sometime. So,
I know.
You know,
I know. Isn't that what your show's for?
No, it's not.
Hey, it's over past the top of the hour. Normally, I would just want to keep going. I actually have some things on my list that I have to do, like finish this book. Cool, nice chat. Let's do this again next week.
Sure.
Is it February next week?
No.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh,
Hey, I would like to ask a quick question. It's interesting that we had an average of about 8 people through most of the show, but when it gets about a quarter till the top of the hour to end the show, all of a sudden loads of people come in. So see, now the numbers are going down. I want to ask those people that come in every week, the last 15 minutes, why do you come in the last 15 minutes?
It's maybe they're from California and it's just now the sun is coming over the horizon.
That could be. I mean, it's 9:45 when we start Eastern. That's 8. 7.
It's 8 o'clock in LA right now. It's 8:15 in LA. That's early.
All right, I get you. But Tuesdays and Wednesdays, at least, they could wake up a little bit early and come on in. So
That's right.
Hey, I'm surprised we still have 5 people every week.
Well, this is an archive show.
Oh, that's right. It's an archive show. Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching the archive, and we'll see you next week.
You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.